From many distant lands, from many distant lands, our forefathers came. Some seeking adventure, some bound in chains. Through battles waged and fought, through victory and pain, by test of their courage, our freedom was gained. In homage to those gone before us, the heroes of lands in the sun, we vow
All right. Welcome, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us in this virtual event in observance of World No Tobacco Day. Now, this webinar today is under the theme Youth Step In and Step Out Tobacco Exposed. And it's being brought to you by the Caribbean Community Secretariat along with the Caribbean Public Health Agency. My name is Savion Casey McFadden, a UWI ambassador and a council member within the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. And with me is
Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Burke. I'm the incoming Dean and CARICOM Youth Ambassador for the Cayman Islands. We are so pleased to have you here and our moderators for today's webinar. Let us extend a warm welcome to you on behalf of CARICOM Secretariat and CARPA. This webinar today is designed to highlight the harmful effects of tobacco use among our young people and place the spotlight on the misconceptions about new tobacco products that promise to be safe alternative.
Mm. And I'm really truly excited for all of the discussions that we're going to have with our vibrant panel and all of the nuggets they're going to share with us. But before we start, we have some housekeeping points that we want to make note of. Vanessa?
So at this time, we're kindly asking you to please have your microphones muted and should remain muted throughout the presentation and panel discussions. If you have questions as the presentation progresses, please feel free to share them in the chat.
All right. Following the presentations, there will be a Q&A segment. So you can use the raise hand feature and your microphones will be unmuted for that. Alternatively, though, if you don't want to do that, you can always type those messages or those questions in the chat as well.
And finally, the webinar will be recorded and shared on the CARICOM website, YouTube channel, and social media platforms for the benefit of all member and associate states. So that is the information that will be available to everyone after we finish today.
All right. So to kick things off, I would like to see all of the members of this great Caribbean community here with us today. So if you can, do not be shy. You can let us know in the chat right now where you're from or which country you're representing. All right. And we're hoping to see the responses flowing in as quickly as possible, right? For me here, this is a Jamaican, Vanessa is a Caymanian. So we want to
Imania.
know. So I want to know, the other Caribbean territories that are being represented here today. All
Let's see.
right. Okay, I'm seeing Cayman Stronghold. We like to see it. Grenada.
Grenada.
Anywhere else? St. Lucia. Nice. Wonderful, wonderful. Anywhere else? I'm hoping to see some
You want
of
to
our
see
more.
the entire CARICOM represented Montserrat.
Mm-hmm. You have some more St. Lucians. That's good. That's good. And just to let everybody know, our next Caribbean Youth Summit is hoped to be in St. Lucia. So we hope to see all of our St. Lucians over there for
We
sure.
have
I'm seeing
Guyana.
nice.
Let's see.
Is that Nula? I don't want to.
We are excited.
Oh,
Oh,
we're excited. Okay. Okay.
okay. We see St. Lucia representing not only their flag and their country, but their language. Okay.
Okay. Montserrat. Love to see Montserrat in the building. Lovely, lovely, lovely. All right. So, the truth is, I'm really happy. I'm truly happy that everyone is here today because, as we continue to talk about these issues that are affecting our human and social development, we cannot forget that we are each other's brothers and each other's sisters, and that at the end of the day, we have each other to lean on, right? So we are one Caribbean community, and we hope to stay that way, right, Vanessa?
Yes. At this time, sorry. I'm just so happy to see the diversity represented by us on this webinar today.
Absolutely.
We're so excited to join this discussion with our exciting panel. But before we do so, we invite you to take a brief quiz. It's roughly 3 questions and it's nothing too hard. And we'll give you a minute or two to complete this quiz. Your feedback will help us to improve the content for our next webinar. So if you could take the time now to fill
And
out
it's
the
in the chat. It's in the chat. So 1, 2, quick 1, 2.
yes.
Right. So to my understanding, well, I filled out the quiz. I filled out the quiz. And I'm sure
Same.
Vanessa, yeah,
I should.
Vanessa filled out the quiz as well. So I hope everybody filled out the quiz, all right? So we thank you so much for completing it. And to set the tone though for this discussion, it's a very important discussion we're having, but we have to set the tone. And to do so, we'll be inviting you all to watch a very brief video on smoking and its effects on health that will be displayed very shortly.
Smoking causes sickness and disability, and it kills. There are more than 4,000 chemicals in tobacco smoke, 60 of which are known to cause cancer. Smoking harms nearly every organ in the body, reduces your health, and causes many diseases. Let's see how it affects the smoker. It causes oral and lung cancer and increases the risk of many other cancers. It also causes breathing problems and increases the risk of dangerous infections like pneumonia. Smokers have more of a chance of having a heart attack and are twice as likely to have a stroke. Smoking can even accelerate hair loss in men. Smoking also affects the eyes, and smokers are more likely to develop cataracts as they age. And it raises the risk of developing weakened bones or osteoporosis. Smokers tend to have yellow teeth and develop gum diseases, persistent bad breath, and other oral hygiene problems. Above all, it kills 5 million people every year and makes many more fall ill. Passive exposure to cigarette smoke also damages health. Not only to themselves, smokers also expose others to tobacco smoke in offices, homes, and public places. Those most at risk are their own family and friends. Passive smoking exposes non-smokers to most of the same toxic gases, chemicals, and fine particles that smokers inhale. Passive exposure causes similar health effects as for those who smoke. Children are particularly susceptible and are more likely to suffer from asthma and serious lung infections. Cigarettes contain nicotine, which is highly addictive. Some research has suggested that it can be more addictive than heroin. Even if you want to quit, you may find it difficult because you are addicted to its effects. So it's important never to start smoking, as it is difficult to stop later. And if you already smoke, stop as soon as possible. Now's the time to quit smoking and tell others how to do the same. Life is better without smoke.
Now, that was very eye-opening and puts us in the right frame of mind for this discussion. So we invite you to join our esteemed panelists for a discussion on Caribbean youth and the harmful effects of tobacco use. This is a reminder that our theme is Youth Step In and Speak Out, Tobacco Exposed. And now we will introduce you to our panel.
All right. Now, before I shout out all of the panelists, I really want to, shout out to all the persons who are currently streaming with us, whether you're on YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. We really appreciate you all for being here as well. So to start us off is Dr. Heather Armstrong, who is the head of the Chronic Disease and Injuries Department within the Office of the Executive Director at the Caribbean Public Health Agency. Her current role with CARPHA benefits from her experience as a medical doctor, a medical officer of health, where she had administrative responsibility for providing public health and primary care services to a defined geographical population. Additionally, Dr. Armstrong is an associate lecturer in public health at the Faculty of Medical Sciences of the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. And within that capacity, she has taught for several years the Master of Public Health course, which focuses on health education and health promotion.
So our next panelist is Dr. Tiffany Skerritt. She's a medical doctor who works collaboratively with primary and secondary health teams in the Ministry of Health and Social Services in Montserrat. She's a proud alumna of the University of West Indies Mona campus, where she received her degree. As a fellow CARICOM Youth Ambassador from Montserrat, she advocates for youth and provides opportunities for them to share their voices while building capacity for their leadership.
Right, and last but certainly not least is Miss Ori Gordon, who is a dedicated educator, humanitarian, and the CARICOM Youth Ambassador for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She's currently a graduate geography teacher at Buckermont Bay Secondary School and an active community social worker in marginalized rural areas. Miss Gordon earned her Bachelor of Sciences degree with a first-class honors, mind you, in social work at the University of the West Indies Open Campus, and is currently pursuing a Master's of Science degree in Management and Educational Leadership at that same institution.
So at this time, you'll welcome our panel online so they can share their cameras. Dr. Heather, yes, we have Dr. Heather, Ori, we have Dr. Tiffany. Okay, we have everyone here. So as we open up this panel discussion, hello, everyone. We're so grateful to have you again. We just like to say that. To start, let's hear why you think this webinar is so important to us here in the Caribbean. We can begin.
So, anybody?
Yeah.
So I would say that this is an important webinar because it raises awareness about what tobacco is doing to our health future, especially when we think of when persons start using tobacco at a young age, more than likely they'll continue using tobacco and other products as they grow older. And the longer you're exposed to the dangerous chemicals found within tobacco, it means you're more at risk for many of the diseases that were shared with us in the previous video. So certainly this is very important because you want to get people to know the truth about tobacco and avoid the negative outcomes that is associated with tobacco use.
I think this is a very timely discussion. Good morning, everyone. And to me, it's all about breaking myths and bursting myths. A lot of times there's misinformation surrounding these types of substances. And because of social media, a lot of the newer nicotine and tobacco devices are popularized. You can see them being used on TikTok and on different social medias. And so because of how global and small the world now is, persons and young people in the Caribbean are seeing these devices being used and may not know all the facts surrounding it. So it's key to have these forums and share information that is from worthwhile sources, and to ensure that people are aware of just how destructive some of these practices can be.
Thank you. I think the tobacco webinar, Sabina, plays a critical role in raising awareness and providing education on various aspects relating to tobacco use. That's why I think it's important.
And thank you guys so much for those responses, very pointed responses as well. And I definitely have to agree with you all, especially when it comes on to social media. I'm seeing especially vaping, what do you call them? Vaping machines, I guess. They're very commercialized right now, and persons are not realizing how detrimental they can actually be. But this discussion really is going to start off with some presentations, which I heard all of you have for us today. And we're going to start off with Dr. Heather Armstrong. So Dr. Armstrong, are you ready?
Yes. So what I have is very brief because, there's so much information that's associated with the use of tobacco. I mean, it's been several years that we've been fighting to make sure that persons are aware of the ill effect of tobacco use, and making sure that you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. Let me just get right. So in terms of what I want to share with you today, as I said, it's very short. Recognizing that when we look globally, we see the numbers in terms of what's happening with tobacco use. And I'm experiencing some difficulty with the PowerPoint, but here we are. This first slide just says to us, when we look at the prevalence or, how percentage of persons in a given population across the world who are using tobacco, it would seem as if the percentages are reducing. When we look from 2000, we see, 20.5% of persons in the world using tobacco products. And when we come to 2022, it's been reduced to a little over 30%. And the projected prevalence is that by 2030, it should be around 12%. So we're thinking, oh, there has been some progress in people recognizing you need to stay away from tobacco products. And when we look a little closer to our area within our Caribbean region, we would see, based on the Global Youth Survey, that the patterns are varying, meaning that, yes, there has been some decreasing use of tobacco among the population, but that's mostly seen between the years of 2000 and 2008. But we know it's still a problem. And what is the problem? So there are two things that we need to take note of. Between 2011 and 2015, there has been change in terms of more experimentation occurring among school-age children. And we know the youngest age that children might experiment, with tobacco products, be around the age of 10. And that's fairly young. And when we think of the years of 2016 to 2017, some research done in 4 Caribbean countries show that there is some increasing use of tobacco products among our adolescents. And I'm sure you'll hear more about it from my colleagues later on. So what the growing concern is, there has been an increased use of e-cigarettes. And also there's the dual use of the old-fashioned cigarettes along with the e-cigarettes. And that's an issue because it means that we need to put measures in place to address this growing trend where, although the statistics will make it seem as if, yes, there's a general decrease in the use of tobacco products, we have some worrying trends that are emerging. And to note that when we compare men to women, men are more likely to use cigarette or tobacco products as opposed to females, especially when we think of the Caribbean setting. This last slide then just gives us a snapshot of some of the countries where they're seeing the increased use of e-cigarettes. And if you look at the bottom, the country at the bottom, compared to the other country, that has a fairly high prevalence, noting that, again, as we said, the trend is increasing in terms of the use of e-cigarettes. And we spoke very briefly on why we think this is happening. So let's talk a little bit about what are the harmful effects. And we recognize that all tobacco products are harmful, all of them. And it is important that you understand the risks associated with the use of tobacco products. We know about first-hand smoke and second-hand smoke. So you don't smoke, but if you are living with or in an area where persons are engaging in the use of tobacco products consistently, you are also at risk. That's important to know. And therefore, when we think about the dangers of tobacco and nicotine products, we note that, as we heard in the video, it harms your lungs, your heart, and it affects your overall health. So when I speak to affecting the heart, we know that tobacco products cause what we call atherosclerosis, and that's just saying it causes hardening of the arteries, whether it's going to the head, the brain, or to your legs. It causes hardening, and it also causes increased blockage of those arteries, which will lead to heart attack, sudden death, strokes, and all other diseases associated with blockage of those arteries that take vital nutrition to your cells. And also, other health problems include the increased tendency to be depressed, to have suicidal thoughts, to feel lonely. We know sometimes people tend to use tobacco products to help relieve stress, but unfortunately, it can cause you to have some mental health issues, which you would surely want to avoid. And in terms of cancers, wherever there may be a cancer in your body, tobacco use will increase your risk. And therefore, we recognize that tobacco use is very harmful. Just to say a little bit on the marketing tactics, and we would have noticed that because of that decrease we're seeing overall prevalence of tobacco use, marketing has become more aggressive. And over the years, you see that there are different stages where branding is very important. You see the industry creating colorful packaging to catch the attention of the youth, sponsoring events which are popular among the youth. And we heard about social media influencers who are using TikTok and other social media platforms to, make it seem as if using tobacco, whatever form, is the cool thing, it's the hip thing. And therefore, it can lead to potential addiction and lifelong customers for the tobacco and manufacturers. And just to highlight then, key things I said, creating advertising, influencer marketing, and product placement. Placing that product where it can catch your eye as you go into the convenience store or supermarket. And then creating it in a way where it's nice, sweet little candy. So that's not harmful. It tastes really good. Not recognizing that when you take that candy, you're actually putting a stamp on your death certificate. So key things I've mentioned so far, that there's a rising e-cigarette use. There are many health risks associated and we need to be aware of them. And we have to put strategies in place to reduce the growing use of tobacco among our youth. And just to leave this last slide to say that there are best practices in place. This would have been launched by WHO. And these are some strategies that are known to make a difference, where governments can implement these strategies and make a difference in the lives of the young people in our region. So in conclusion, youth and e-cigarettes trends represent a pressing public health challenge. By raising awareness, just as we're doing today, and implementing targeted interventions, advocating for stronger regulations, we can work together towards safeguarding the well-being of our youth and future generations. And I'll turn it over to the moderators.
Thank you. That was a brilliant presentation, Dr. Armstrong. You shared so much insight and facts and different statistics, especially relating to the Caribbean. So thank you for sharing that. Next, we'll go right on into our presentation from Ms. Ori Gordon. She will be presenting right now. Let's see if we can get her slides up. Ori, are you ready?
Yes, please. The slides, Vanessa?
Yes, trying to get them up now.
Thank you. So good day, everyone. The question I have been asked to address today is, how can students be empowered to take responsibility for addressing and reducing tobacco use within their school community? Is this something that is possible? Yes, it is something that is possible. As a young educator in the Caribbean, I had the incredible opportunity to be a part of the Second Caribbean Forum on Drug Use Prevention held last year in the Bahamas. This experience allowed me to engage with many youths from across the Caribbean, all of whom are passionate about creating a healthier future for our Caribbean. Today, I want to share with you some strategies on how we can empower Caribbean students to address and reduce tobacco within their communities. First, let's acknowledge the reality we live in the Caribbean. According to UNICEF Generation Unlimited Production in 2020, a significant percentage of Caribbean adolescents between the age of 13 to 15 are using tobacco products and are frequently exposed to others smoking. For example, in Anguilla, 14% of adolescents use tobacco products in the past 30 days, and 40% saw others smoking in their presence, revealed by Anguilla's GSHS in 2016. In Trinidad and Tobago, these figures stand at 12% and 55% respectively, shared in Trinidad and Tobago's GSHS 2017. These statistics highlight the pervasive nature of tobacco use among our youth and their exposure to it. Unfortunately, many schools across the Caribbean have yet to implement comprehensive strategies to tackle these issues effectively. While some schools have attempts, such as occasional anti-tobacco campaigns or health education classes, these efforts often lack consistency and depth. The main reason for the underutilization of effective mechanisms include limited resources, lack of training for educators, and insufficient community and parental involvement. Now, there are, however, examples of schools that have successfully implemented these strategies. Take, for instance, schools in California, USA, who have adopted a multifaceted approach into involving education, engagement, and supportive policies. These schools have seen a significant reduction in tobacco use among students by integrated comprehensive education programs and organizing engaging activities and providing ample resources for students who wish to quit. First and foremost, the foundation of any representative initiative is education. Comprehensive education initiatives that inform students of the risk associated with tobacco smoking must be put into place. These initiatives should focus on the social and health ramifications of tobacco use and be school-based, age, and culturally appropriate. We give our students the information they need to make wise decisions about their health by educating them. Next, engagement is key. We can organize tobacco campaigns within schools, such as poster contests, essay competitions, drama performances, to raise awareness about the dangers of tobacco. Utilizing social media and technology can further amplify our message. Digital campaigns and platforms that students frequently use can spread anti-tobacco messages quickly and effectively. Engaging students in a medium they are comfortable with. Furthermore, the significance of community and parents cannot be emphasized enough. Parental involvement is essential. We must include parents in the teaching process by giving them the knowledge and tools they need to help their children abstain from tobacco use. School programs can receive professional resources and support through community collaborations with local health organizations, government agencies, and non-governmental agencies. Finally, encouragement and dedication are maintained in large parts by positive reinforcement. Students and organizations that significantly lower tobacco usage in their school communities ought to be honored and recognized. Additionally, encouraging students to adopt healthier behaviors can offer a holistic approach to well-being by supporting overall healthy lifestyle choices such as nutrition and physical activities. By combining the above shared, we can empower Caribbean students to take responsibility for reducing tobacco use within their school communities. These efforts not only help in decreasing tobacco consumption, but also aid in building leadership skills and promoting a healthier school environment for our region's children. In order to empower students to be responsible for addressing and reducing tobacco use within the school community, the policymakers and leaders in the Caribbean should create policy and legislations that create parameters for young people and their environments. In a publication done by Healthy Caribbean Cohesion, PAHO, WHO, and the University of the West Indies, Cayfield Faculty of Law, in May 2022, titled Towards a 100% Smoke-Free Caribbean, What Ministries of Education Need to Know. Ministries of Education and school administrators need to provide a safe and healthy school environment for students, including by ensuring the schools and their environs are 100% smoke-free. For example, Under St. Lucia Public Health Smoking Control Regulation 2020, smoking, holding lit, electronic tobacco, other products or substances is prohibited within a 10-meter radius of an educational institution of all levels and a childcare institution, as well as bus stops, public transports, terminals, or an area specially for use by children. Similarly, other Caribbean countries like Jamaica and Antigua has these policies in place as well. I am encouraging nations to implement similar measures as we seek to create a positive and safe place for our nation's future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Gordon. So much insights from that presentation as well. And I really appreciated you talking about the fact that we need to engage with our youth and engage from the home even to try and get this issue sorted out. So finally, last but not least, we're going to take our presentation now from Dr. Skerritt. Tiffany, are you with us?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. All right, the platform is yours.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I think that Dr. Armstrong and Ori set a wonderful foundation in terms of establishing some key statistics, what's happening in the region, the fact that we're seeing growing numbers of use of these types of products, both tobacco and nicotine based. And I think today's theme is fitting, youth stepping in and speaking out, because we are in a time where local exposure is increasing and global exposure through social media is increasing. My perspective will be to address the question of what are the common misconceptions about newer nicotine and tobacco products. As we know, this is $1 billion, maybe $1 trillion industry. And so there's lots of money being moved into marketing these newer products. We know a lot more about cigarette and tobacco smoking now than we ever did before. And so the history of the disease associated with chronic use of tobacco, chronic use of nicotine is well understood. What has happened over the last few years is that these companies have made it their business to transform their product and make it seem safer and more attractive. So some of the common misconceptions. Persons have drifted from using cigarettes because we know that cigarettes are associated with increased risk of various cancers, heart disease, etc. And they've repackaged the same nicotine, which is the addictive component of cigarettes, into various forms. So we have vapes, there are e-cigarettes, there are also various nicotine-containing substances and that are utilized. And whereas cigarette use is typically restricted and smoking is restricted in particular areas, then there are still some gray areas when it comes to these newer products. So what are the myths? Some of the myths that are facing our youth are that these newer nicotine products or these newer tobacco products are not addictive. They're also faced with the contention that, you know, they're not a cigarette. It's not a cigarette. So this is not going to harm me. This is not going to cause any health issues. They're also made to believe or marketed to believe that these products are somehow cheaper, or, you know, you're not buying packs of cigarettes. You would only need to have one single vape or one single cigarette. The challenge with this marketing strategy, and I guess it's working for them, but the reality is for young people that these newer products do contain nicotine and in varying amounts, varying concentrations. In a lot of ways, these e-cigarettes and vapes contain nicotine at much higher concentrations per mil. So if you were to read the fine print and you were to check the labels, you'd realize that one cigarette may have about 1.1 milligram of nicotine, but there's so much more milligrams per mil in your liquid vape, which means that your likelihood to become addicted or dependent on these newer devices increases. What we know about substance use and substance dependence and addiction is that the younger persons are introduced to nicotine and similar substances, the more likely they are to remain addicted. And so it's critical that we delay the time of exposure. We reduce the exposure and we delay the onset of use for these products. And because we know that some of these products have higher concentrations of nicotine or have varying concentrations of tobacco, we know that their risk for addiction increases. We know that their risk for certain heart conditions is not any less. And because of the nature of nicotine and the urge to use more as you're exposed, then they're likely not to be saving any money by opting for these newer devices as opposed to cigarettes, because the loop of need continues. You use, you feel satisfied, you want to repeat that feeling. And so it's challenging now for us as healthcare practitioners to find ways to help those who are utilizing these newer devices. And so the next question I would like to address is, what are some possible interventions available for users? Now, with our newer devices, access is not yet legislated in some countries to restrict who can use them, when they can be used, and where they can be used. And my fellow panelists have spoken in detail about how legislation can help, how schools can help. I think for those young persons or adults who are already utilizing tobacco or already utilizing nicotine-based products, we should opt for non-punitive and more rehabilitative methods of intervention. That is to say, a user is at risk of becoming somebody who is dependent, is at risk of becoming an addict. And so the measure or the intervention should be with the aim of rehabilitating. I love the concept of empowerment through education. I think that's an opportunity that we have through our school systems and in collaboration, with ministries of health. I also think there's a role for empowering parents and various civil service organizations where young people congregate. This is extended to religious groups as well, so that the adults who are around who have influence are more comfortable with having these conversations. In the absence of knowledge and in the absence of information, then a lot of rumor and misinformation can occur. And so I think part of addressing intervention for users is making sure those around them are aware and can provide good advice and can support their intent to stop or their intent to quit. I think that any interventions targeted for persons, young persons and otherwise, who are utilizing nicotine-based, tobacco-based products should involve multiple persons. So we know that addiction and dependence is not strictly physical. It's not just the use. There are mental components. We know that it has an impact on person's mental health. So there's need to incorporate our counselors. There's need to incorporate our psychiatrists. There's need to incorporate our psychiatric nurses and our community-based nurses. We also know that in most countries, there is some mechanism for screening young people who are in schools. And here in Montserrat, we have what we call our school health program, which is quite robust and allows for screening our school-age children at set points, so grade 6, third form, and as they enter primary school. And so we have the opportunity then to intervene when we detect or determine that there's risky behavior in the form of use of these devices. I also think that my fellow ambassadors and I have a role to play. Vanessa is here. And so those who have influence, whether social media or have influence in their communities, use forums like this and otherwise to speak out and provide that type of voice. And Ori is using her space in schools. Dr. Armstrong is providing the statistics and the data. But what we know is a growing issue, public health issue has to be addressed. And I think the youth are prime and in a good position to speak out and reduce our exposure to tobacco. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Tiffany, for that. That was really inspiring and kind of empowering, honestly, to hear, as a youth advocate myself, to know that we can share our voices, we can use our voices for good, right? But so we want to kind of have a conversation right now based on everything that you all would have talked about. And I really want to start off with something that I've realized across the presentations. We're seeing where social media is a real factor to this growing conversation, because it's a case where digital marketing is very prevalent for these vaping machines, for smoking, for tobacco use in general. So I wanted to open the floor to any of the panelists. How do you think can we start turning it and making it a 180 so that we start realizing that this is a problem, this is an issue? You know, how can we get that conversation going? It's open to anybody. Go ahead, Tiffany. Yes, yeah. I'm not sure.
I'll yield to Armstrong and I'll come right after. Go ahead, Dr. Armstrong.
Okay.
Me, that's a very important question. And recognize that we are consumers, whether we are watching movies or using other social media platforms, and we have the ability to say, this is not appropriate content. It brings to mind a movie I was watching recently where a mother came down with her baby in arms, and as she was descending, there was her significant other smoking or vaping. And she turned around and went back up to, I guess, to place the baby in its crib. And she said to her partner, I have, why have you started? And I was thinking, okay, great, she is standing up to him, knowing that secondhand smoke can cause an issue. But then I was left with my mouth open when she said, why do you start without me? Because that was unexpected. And I'm thinking, here we're seeing more and more movies creating this experience in the characters where smoking is seen as hit. This is something that you need to do. See the young people smoking, and we have to say to whoever's producing this content, this is not appropriate. We know that when we are encouraged then to do things we shouldn't, and we need to speak out against the infiltration of the industry into marketing and social media platforms that influence their youth to make the wrong decisions. So, it's at all levels. The personal decision, I'm not going to smoke, the environment that helps you to make that decision not to use tobacco. I mean, there's several factors, but I'll use so that Tiffany can, add her comments.
I definitely agree. So what we're consuming definitely matters, what we're seeing. But I think also getting a bit bolder in our interactions. Are you existing in spaces where people are smoking around you and being comfortable with addressing it in that moment as well? We were a lot more comfortable when it was cigarettes, because the idea everybody began to learn that secondhand smoke is so dangerous. And that conversation needs to be extended to these, even though, okay, most of them are nicotine driven and the person is inhaling it. But you can still have the conversation that, okay, I'm a non-smoker, you're in this space, I'm uncomfortable with you smoking around me. And we need to be comfortable with having those conversations with those closest to us, and then it becomes easier as you spread it a bit further. But just being open and honest in the spaces in which we exist, and people will respect you for it. I have had the occasion of asking somebody around me to not to, and they have had no problem with saying no, because it's a choice that they're making, but the exposure risk is to all of us.
And just to add, as an educator in secondary schools, I think when I teach at a remedial school and I have a lot of students who cannot read and write. They are reading, I have fifth form students who are reading at alphabetical level and so on. So I think breaking down the information to them is very important to get the message across, because normally when we have webinars, when we have panel discussion, we use a lot of big terms that they cannot understand. So breaking it down and having persons coming in and sharing their personal testimony and success story relating to tobacco, not in any high content, but to reach them at their level is very important as well.
Wow, I think I am a digital marketer myself. Savian, just throwing digital marketing out there. I am a digital marketing in the public service in my country, and I think it's very important to hear professional perspectives, young person's perspectives, educators' perspectives on tobacco use. And one of the things that were touched on is the targeting towards youth and this education system. I know Ari talked a little bit about how policies can help to reduce this, and she's the examples of different countries. But from a professional perspective, in addition to Ori, or you can build on your discussion earlier, what would you say policymakers and decision makers can do to ensure the environment that young people are in is safe and tobacco-free?
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. As I said, when I was doing my research, I came across some information that stated in St. Lucia. In St. Lucia, for example, in St. Lucia, they have a non-smoking policy regulation that was formulated in 2020, where smoking, holding lit electronic tobacco and other products and substances is prohibited within a 10-meter radius. And other Caribbean countries such as Jamaica and Antigua have jumped on board and implemented this as well. So I think that this can work across the board for all Caribbean countries. Is a good initiative. And I think the region all other Caribbean countries can adopt it as well.
Sorry, not to break it. Sorry, Dr. Heather, just to say as well, Tiffany mentioned that these measures not being punitive. So can we just elaborate on that too in our discussion as well? Like people are addicted, they're youth, they are targeted. How can you ensure it's more rehabilitational based and not just punitive? Because they're children and a lot of the times they don't even know the implications. So Dr. Heather, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with Ori in terms of the implementation of regulations that help to protect those, yes, who are using tobacco smoke, but certainly when we think about secondhand smoke, where no smoking signs are up, boldly displayed, so persons can see, look, this is a policy here, no smoking when you enter this establishment. You do have issues where sometimes there are little loopholes that people find, especially with the occasion of the hookah clubs and other vaping establishments, and therefore regulation has to be adjusted to address the changing trends that we're seeing. Because when those regulations were first established, the biggest problem was cigarette use, the traditional cigarette or cigar. But as we see, things are being repackaged and rebranded, and therefore regulation has to be updated to address those changes in the industry. And certainly when we think about providing help, obviously, or our healthcare systems that provide counseling and other different strategies. As a medical practitioner, I know we had the opportunity to be trained in how do we address people who may be experiencing some addiction with tobacco products and other harmful substances, but certainly there needs to be more training in our healthcare professionals so that there is just capacity to give individuals that assistance as required.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I see, I think about the no smoking signs that I've seen, and most of them have a slash through a cigarette. But smoking now, as you said, as we're seeing, has been rebranded. And so even the no smoking signs will have to be updated to include smoking in all its forms for that visual. I see Joel has a question here speaking about the impact of COVID-19 and how, young persons are faced with issues with mental health, the fact that they're using tobacco products as a way to cope, and what sort of advice we would offer to these young persons. I think, Joel, one of the mechanisms we have to utilize is, with relating to interventions for users, it can be reward based. So, you are able to stop for this period of time and we provide incentives. But along with that, alternatives, right? So we're using substance as a replacement for the high. We're using substance as a replacement for a way of feeling good. It's creating programs that allow development of young people, whether it's skills or talents, in mechanisms that are non-addictive. So it may force us through social work and other elements to get creative. I know there's civil service organizations, some of which are dedicated to creating safe spaces for young people where they can engage in play, where they can create more green space for them to enjoy outdoors or to be developed otherwise. So we know that mental health and its challenges are broad. There are many things that contribute to it. Substance use is really just a band-aid. And so it really requires evaluation and assessment and support. And often that is medical and often that is also psychological.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for that. Honestly, really, all of the nuggets that are being dropped right now, I really hope everyone is listening in. And it's something, especially when I heard about, this conversation, we're talking a lot about how it's being presented to us. It's something I've always talked about myself as an advocate. I feel that many of the issues that we have with our development is really a matter of presentation. So, whether we have campaigns or we enter into the environments, I'm really happy that everyone here has talked about the fact that we have to meet youth at their level and whichever level that may be. You might have persons like ourselves here who, are, we have the jargon, we know the big words, but the grassroots youth, the common Caribbean man, that person who really and truly isn't looking at this webinar, isn't talking in this webinar, how would they understand everything that's being said here? I really think we need to, go further than that and go beyond that. And I'm really happy that Ori would have talked about that, especially because it's something I'm realizing that it's really the crux of the matter. It's a problem really within the problem, the way in which we're presenting everything. I'm seeing Michelle is saying here that we need to create programs that build resilience of youth, and that are important to increasing the coping strategies and decision-making skills of our youth, because that will help better cope. That will help them to cope more. And I agree. I fundamentally agree with that as well. Vanessa, I see you
So, just to
unmuted.
build on that, a lot of these programs, especially with sports, they have policies such as anti-doping, which is like another layer on
Mhm.
top of that. So then these environments are also safe, and to motivate young people to keep showing up, they have to adhere to these regulations and rules, but at the same time, it's for the benefit of them. It isn't, as we would have mentioned before, punitive or looking at it from a reprimanding perspective. It is more like, here's an environment where you can thrive, and here's an environment where you could do something else with your time, with your skills, as Dr. Tiffany would have said, and do better for yourself. And a lot of the time, physical activity also helps with depression. So they will be kind of counteracting the underlying issue as well as its results and its impact on them at the same time. So I think with Michelle saying creating programs, everyone discussing their topics in a holistic way is very important, because again, building on Dr. Tiffany, it's not just the child, it's not just the doctors, it's not just psychologists, it's community leaders, us as young people creating that environmental culture shift, and it may look fun, it's colorful, it's targeted towards young people, which as a marketer, I find that very sad, that we're targeting children for drugs, but at the same time, what can we do as a community to say, keep our young people accountable, help our doctors and our psychologists, as well as hold businesses and legislations accountable for this marketing. So I think it is a holistic, interdisciplinary approach. In the small way, every mickle make a muckle, every one man holding into each other's hand and helping our young people to be resilient and to rise above different things like substance abuse, especially when we talk about tobacco. It requires our community, it requires everyone. And that is the part that I think is important. The little man on the street and us being our jargon people, everyone needs to have a role in playing in our youth being impacted by something that, as Dr. Heather would have said, put a stamp on their death note.
Hey, good morning. It's Kenroy from Belize. I want to share based on experience. I currently serve as the community chairperson, which is the youngest in the country of Belize. And I have experienced this within the tenure of my leadership. When I became the chairperson of this community where I'm from, most of our young people are engaged in criminal activities, engaged in violence. And then becoming a leader, I went on the ground, listened to our young people, how we can address this, what we can do to address the issue of you being involving in criminal activities, or being on the street smoking and all of that. The feedback from my young people, because most of them do not understand what will be the disadvantage of them doing this, right? We talked about it. They know, they see other elders, smoking, fighting, or doing all sort of things, but they don't know how it will affect them, right? So what I did as a leader, I conversed with them and I asked them what we can do to address these issues. If I want to take you out of the street, let me have you something constructive to do, right? So when I look at it, when I engage, I do the community engagement, our young people, don't have nothing to do, especially when they graduate from primary school. from secondary school. They just go on the street and do nothing. No jobs is being created for them to have them active. So what we do that I keep engage them in sports. I brought sports. This is where leaders need to be involved as well. This is where our ministers need to embark on making sure that our young people are actively engaged on a daily basis. How can we address this issue if we don't have our leaders taking these matters seriously, right? So what I did, we started a campaign of having all youths come to do maybe cleanup campaign, engaging. I started a football competition. We started a youth camp. We started something. They engage every weekend. Our young people are actively doing something. Those are the things that I see that can benefit them. If we want to keep them out of the street, obviously we have to have something to have them actively doing something within our community. So that is one thing I want to share, because I can tell you, when I became a leader of my community, my young people are out there, just creating problems and so forth. So what we did, we just, engage with them. We have a community meeting with the parents as well. We ask them that, for us to address these issues, we have to come together, work together, and make sure that we implement. We talk action. We just don't, tell them that we're going to do it. At the end of the day, we don't have nothing done for them. So it's just something I want to share with you guys.
Thanks a ton, Kenroy, for sharing. I think you touched on what everyone's trying to bring home. It's all of us in our different ways and making sure youth have outlets. So at this time, we would like to move into our question and answer segment. Real quick, if you have any questions for our panelists, please make sure to drop them in the chat. We'll be reading them as we go through. You have a wide variety. You have doctors, you have community leaders, you have educators on this call right now. So this is your opportunity to discuss or ask questions about what you think our panel should be discussing at this point. So drop it in the chat. Let's see.
And if you wish to, you can also raise your hand, and our communications unit, aka Timothy, will unmute your mic so that you're able to, chime in.
Yes. Stephanie. Any questions at this time?
No, I feel like they're typing.
I think they're
Probably
overwhelmed with
typing.
all the new nuggets of information they have, like the modern day statistics, and realizing, vaping actually is not as the misconceptions of it's not what the community is echoing sometimes, and the influence of it. So I think a lot of people in the chat and in this call in general might just be overwhelmed with the information that is our reality.
Panelists are too good. They're too good.
It's our reality. I mean, we address this from different angles. We did the background on from a health perspective, statistics, the transition, the rebranding, how it's affecting our schools, our social communities. I think we touched on a lot today.
I agree. I definitely agree. So this is our final call for questions, guys. Final call. If not, we'll sadly have to move on.
Right.
But all right, guys. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, and that's okay.
Okay, so
because
sorry, we have a question from Facebook.
Oh, we have a question. Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about flavored vapes? Are they safe?
Panel, over to you. Anybody? Especially, I am going to say the medical doctors here will have a word on that one.
So I'll say the sentence: all tobacco products, whether flavored, otherwise, they're not safe. That is as simple as you can put it. They're not safe. And we know that sometimes, when we just think of this. When you're, I don't know, depending on how old you are, how young you are, sometimes you want to do a cleansing, and sometimes for the children, mothers would put a little sugar or some honey to make it taste sweet, but we know it's bitter underneath there. We know how nasty it tastes. So think of it the same thing with tobacco products. No matter how lovely it tastes, we know that there's danger associated with its use.
I have to echo that sentiment. And there's so much that we don't know yet about these new products and how they are going to cause effects. One of the things we do know, though, I've seen some papers speaking about EVALI, EVALI, which is e-cigarette and vape associated lung injury. And so now with this new class of products, there is their own class of disease where we're finding that there is impact on the lungs, right? It thankfully seems to be treatable. So that's what we know so far, but there are growing cases of this EVALI associated with use of e-cigarettes, use of vapes, and it now affecting the lungs and having negative and harmful effects on the lungs. So no matter how good it smells or tastes, what you said, it's wrapped, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's a good way to describe these newer products. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So they look different, but the inside, the content is just as deadly.
We have another question in chat. Are non-tobacco vape/hookah products a safer alternative? I think Giselle, you joined us a little bit later in the call, but one of our doctors did touch on this. I don't know if you want to reiterate your point. I don't remember. I think we talked about the fact that, like, not only is it the transition from cigarettes to vapes, you would think it would encourage more people to just use vapes, but finding out that they're using both of them at the same time, finding out things like vapes have more nicotine per mil. That's, I think Dr. Tiffany said it in the end, than regular cigarettes. So I don't know if any of the doctors want to make sure that
yeah, so that's a very good summary, Van. Excellent. I saw Dr. Heather mouthing my name. But yes, think about it this way. Would you have done it if it was a cigarette? So despite the fact that it's repackaged, look at it as a cigarette of a different form, meaning that it still contains products that can be addictive. It still contains products that can cause illness and disease. It still has the potential to destroy or affect your lungs. And for that reason alone, it is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's just repackaged in a nicer way. It has some fruit pictures on it to say it might be strawberry flavored, but consider it a strawberry flavored cigarette. And if you keep that imaging in mind, I think for our generation especially, people aren't as keen on smoking cigarettes because our parents would have told us, don't bother with the smoking, you know, it can cause cancer and all these things. So we are well versed on cigarettes. And that is one of the reasons why these companies have become so strategic. They know that keeping it in that package is not as attractive. They've been forced to declare right on their labels that this product and this packaging has these have these effects. They have not yet been forced to do that for the newer products, and so they're running with it. But consider them just as dangerous.
All right. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Dr.
add to what Tiffany was saying, that you'd find that with these products, they seem to be more addictive. And I use this example where I was watching a famous comedian, and he was doing his set, but he was constantly vaping. He had this thing in his hand. He was, you know, if he was using a cigarette, more than likely he would do it before or after. So we find the issue where we're thinking it's safer, but actually it opens the door for greater addiction and dependency on these nicotine-based products.
And that's a normalization I'm seeing right there as well. Like, you know, we're seeing that vaping is becoming normalized just because of how it's being presented. Oh boy, then we really need to move. We need to step in and step out, do we? I have a question here from Instagram. The person asked, what about secondhand smoke in your clothes? The smell that remains, is that also dangerous? And I want to hear the answer to this. This is interesting.
Okay, I can start, but just to say, you've been exposed. So if it's on your clothes, it has landing on your skin as well. Just remember that the skin is an organ as well, and things can be absorbed through the skin. But of course, if you've been exposed, it has also entered your lungs, into your whole system. So, and we know from research that secondhand smoke is just as deadly as firsthand smoke. We know it causes a lot of health issues. Children who are at risk for asthma have a greater risk of having reactive airway, yes. And this can continue from when they're young to when they're older. They continue to have issues with their lungs. We know that secondhand smoke is deadly. And if it's on your clothes, it's inside of your lung system, your respiratory system. And as I said, through your skin and other avenues through which chemicals and other substances can enter the body.
I see this question from Nish, and I think the way I'm going to answer it is as follows. So maybe you're not a smoker, maybe you know a smoker, but these are some of the questions that you could ask to help that person determine, is it time for me to quit? So is there a need to vape or use the product as soon as you wake up or even during an activity? Do you feel anxious or irritable when you want to but can't? Do you have trouble concentrating or sleeping? Do you keep vaping or using these products even though you know it's bad for you? Do you find yourself reaching for it even without thinking about it? It's like second nature. And do you get interruptive thoughts about using the product? And if any of these are a yes, or if any of these are something you've observed in somebody who's close to you, I would say it's a good time to encourage them to seek intervention. So Nish's question is it better to just stop all at once? Can you try to wean yourself off? I would say no two persons are the same. Some persons have the ability to quit what we call cold turkey, meaning they just decide today that they're not going to do it again and they never do it again. And some persons aren't able to do that. They may suffer with withdrawal symptoms. They may find that they have relapse because they attempt, but without the requisite support, they're unable to do it. There are mechanisms that we use. There's what we call nicotine replacement therapy, where we give nicotine in smaller aliquots or smaller doses to allow the person to minimize their withdrawal symptoms as they transition. There are medications that can be prescribed as well that basically, I don't want to say force you, but inhibit the urge to smoke and to use these products. And although it's a habit, it's really linked to hormones, it's linked to your nervous system. It's so closely tied because this is a substance binding to a receptor, bringing out an effect. So some people can wean themselves off. My answer is some people can wean themselves off and some people require more help. Either way, the help is available, whether through the health sector by speaking to your doctor, speaking to your nurse, being referred to a team that can support you, or if you don't have access, even utilizing virtual mechanisms or online support groups that are established.
Thank you, Dr. Tiffany. That kind of summarizes the question that was asked to us on Twitter. Is there an easy way to quit? And I think to reiterate to Miss Dr. Tiffany, Dr. Skerritt, sorry, that it depends on the person. I think that she's saying you have to find the method that is most sustainable for you, and there's help out there to address that. I got another question directly saying that it's a question / statement. The vape company that designed their vape as a flash drive should be sued by the flash drive manufacturers. It was intentionally designed for school students to take to school. So I think that this person is commenting and stating on that. I think Mr. James Miles, he's stating that the direct targeting to package this product to be in disguise for students to bring to school should be having legal repercussions for it. I don't know if anyone on the panel wants to talk about it, especially Ori. How do you feel about the statement that was made?
Okay, so Vanessa, recently, my fifth form students, they had a flash drive, but it was actually a vape.
Yeah.
It was actually a vape, and they were using it in school, and I think the counselor saw them, and she asked them where they got it from, and they said they bought it at the smoke shop. And she asks, did they ask you for ID or whatever? And they said no. But to be honest, there were no penalties, there were nothing, because our legislation doesn't have nothing outlined in our Education Act. Currently in St. Vincent doesn't have nothing outlining that the child gets expelled, the child gets a referral. There's nothing in place to say, okay, this is what is going to happen. You're going to be penalized. These are the penalties. There's nothing. So what happened is the child was calling for a parental conference. The principal decided that if the child bring this back to school, she's going to expel him, and that was it.
That's so interesting. I just feel like the moment I heard legal, because I am a lawyer by soon to be by profession. So the moment I heard this question, this comment by Dr. Miles, it really piqued my mind. And honestly, truth be told, they can be sued. It's very likely that they can be sued from many different vantage points. So as Ori would have talked about, we can sue them for the fraudulent way that they're carrying nicotine products into the school, but also we can sue them from the design point of view, and that intellectual property, because the truth is, creating a device that looks like one thing, that design, whatever that design is, that is something that's protected by all of these flash drive companies. And those flash drive companies can actually sue if they choose to, based on the way in which the product is being, designed. So it's very likely that, if whoever that is or whoever it is, if they wish to, they can sue from those two different vantage points. But any other questions, Vanessa, or are we finished?
I think we're done at this point. I think that wraps up our questions. But just to reiterate, you from a legal perspective, from a marketing perspective, I would have shared earlier for those that were on the call, it is very disheartening. From a marketer's perspective, we are supposed to think about our consumers in the best interest, and tobacco marketers, I guess, are stuck in a difficult position. But from that perspective of the packaging and how it's displayed to the consumer, I don't think it's just a legal manufacturer situation. I think we have to look at it from import, government, how they regulate these products being imported into the country, how they even get there in the first place. Then we need to hold these distributors accountable, because you should not be able to sell to minors, especially the fact that you bought these products to distribute to kids is already deceitful. So I think that we have to look at this from the different stakeholders in the industry and how they play a role in targeting our young people in the region. So I do think this is a very, very interactive discussion, and we thank everyone so far. I'll pass it over back to Savian.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys so much. Really, really appreciate this discussion. It was very fulsome. And as Vanessa said, I feel like this is very interdisciplinary. There are a lot of different vantage points that we can look at this issue from. And because of that, we really need to be together and we need to work together to resolve it, right? Now, as a reminder, the PAHO website has all of the resources on tobacco and its harmful impact on youth, including this Youth Step In and Speak Out Tobacco Exposed campaign, right? So you can head over to the PAHO website once the forum is finished to, check out all of that information so that you're duly informed, right? Now I'm going to invite everyone to complete our final quiz, and it's simply 3 questions once again. And the link has been posted in the chat for you all to, to respond to. But in the meantime, as you complete that quiz, I am going to invite a representative from the Directorate of Human and Social Development of the Caribbean Community Secretariat to share some words of appreciation.
Thank you, Savian. I am Tamara Bob. I'm the Program Manager, Health Sector Development at the CARICOM Secretariat. Today's virtual event in observance of World No Tobacco Day would not have been possible without the technical and creative support of key contributors. So on behalf of the CARICOM Secretariat, I extend gratitude to Dr. Joy St. John, Executive Director of CAFA, and other CAFA colleagues, Our very outstanding panelists, Dr. Heather Armstrong, Dr. Tiffany Skerritt, and Ms. Ori Gordon, for your excellent insight and expertise into the harmful effects of tobacco use on our Caribbean youth and the recommendations that you advanced to empower our youth to make informed choices regarding tobacco. Savian McFadden and Vanessa Burke for your excellent moderation of today's session. Special thanks also to our CARICOM youth ambassadors and youth leaders for supporting this event. To the team from the Human and Social Development Directorate at the CARICOM Secretariat, Ms. Michelle Small-Bartley and Dr. Serena Bender-Pelswick, thank you so much for your expertise and guidance. And also very special thanks to our CARICOM communications team, Mr. DK Noel, Mr. Timothy Austin, and Ms. Chanel Spooner. Thank you to Mr. Hussein Ali for his technical support. Special appreciation to you, our audience, for your engagement, support, and dedication to knowledge sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this important initiative through your participation today. Please continue to engage with the CARICOM Secretariat through our website and social media platforms. It's at caricom.org or at caricom.org for news on our upcoming webinars and any other virtual event. And as you've been reminded before, the webinar was recorded and will be available on our website, on our YouTube channel, and the links will be posted as well to our social media platform. We look forward to you joining us for our next webinar. And of course, you will receive an announcement via email. Thank you so much, everyone.
At this point, I would like to also say thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
All right.